QuickBooks Online 2021 Summary Balance Sheet. Let's get into it with Intuit's QuickBooks Online 2021. Here we are in our free QuickBooks Online test drive file, which you can find by searching in your favorite browser for QuickBooks Online Test Drive. We're in Craig's Design and Landscaping Services practice file. Going over to the reports on the left-hand side, we will be considering this summary balance sheet. But first, we want to compare and contrast that to the standard balance sheet. So let's open that up first. We're going to be opening up the balance sheet here in our favorite reports. There's our standard balance sheet. Let's change the dates up top from 01/01/20 to 12/31/20 and run that report. So there's the standard. Let's right-click up top again. Let's open up the summary. So I'm going to right-click and duplicate. Right-click and duplicate. I'm going to open my summary balance sheet up here, and then I'm going to duplicate it again, so we have one more tab open. So I'm going to right-click and duplicate again. And so now we've got three tabs. The first tab I'm going to use if we want to go back and look at anything other than our reports. The last tab is going to be the balance sheet report. This second tab, that's where I'm going to open up the summary balance sheet. So I'm going to scroll on down to the reports again. We're looking for the summary balance sheet, and that's going to be in the business overview here, or you could search for it in your search options up top. So we got the balance sheet summary. That's the one we want. Opening up then the balance sheet summary. I'm going to close now the hamburger. So we'll close the hamburger, hold down Control, scroll up a bit to that 125. That's where I like to be, that 125%. Going to change the dates up top once again from 01/01/20 to 12/31/20 and then run that report. So here we have the summary balance sheet. Now, obviously, it's similar to the standard balance sheet, except for it's going to be a lot less detailed for it. So the summary balance sheet's a great report if we're going to be providing it to somebody else or presenting a report. Then you might want the summary balance sheet first, because that's where you can get your main points across and try to get the most comprehension and understanding, even from those who don't really understand the financial statements that well. And then when asked questions about the summary balance sheet, you could then jump into like the standard balance sheet, which is going to be the one that will have more detail that we're usually concentrating in on. Also note that the summary balance sheet is a good one to use for demonstration, but probably not the main one you're going to be using to analyze transactions as you jump back and forth from the data input to the balance sheet and the income statement. Remember that as we enter transactions, for example, if I hit the hamburger up top, all of these items that we looked at, these will affect the financial statements. I would have the balance sheet and income statement open, or a trial balance if you want to get used to that, so that you could practice the data input and see what the data input will look like. The summary trial balance you would think would be a good place to go, but it's not as good because you can't see all the accounts there. It's going to be grouped by basically the account types, and therefore you can't get down to the details. So you want either a trial balance or both the balance sheet standard and the income statement open so you can get down to the actual accounts here and drill down on the data using the zoom feature to see what is actually going on as you do the data input. So for example, if I wanted to get into this checking account here, I can zoom into the checking account and on the normal balance sheet, and I can get that transaction detailed report. If I scroll back up, I'm going to go back to the balance sheet. I cannot do that so much on the summary balance sheet, go into the summary balance sheet, because I have all bank accounts here. If I select the item in all bank accounts, I do get the detailed report, but it has two accounts in it. They're kind of on top of each other for the savings and the checking account rather than being able to get into one account at a time. So going back to the summary balance sheet, how is the summary balance sheet broken out? It's basically broken out by grouping the classes together or grouping the major categories together. So in other words, if I go back to the first tab and we go down to our accounting and we take a look at our chart of accounts, and I'm going to see the chart of accounts down below, you'll recall that we entered the accounts and we talked about how they're going to be set up by basically classes here. So that's going to be one of the driving factors that QuickBooks uses to create these reports. So if I go up to the Craig's Design and Landscaping, now we have the assets. That's not going to be a class in and of itself, but that's a normal financial accounting kind of formatting. And then we've got the current assets. Now that's the normal financial accounting grouping of things in, the current assets. If you're making like generally accepted accounting principle financial reports. And then in there, we have then the classes. Now the classes now are grouped in the total. So in other words, instead of having, if I go to the balance sheet, the breakout and the triangle for the classes to give us the detail or less detail, we're going to go over here. We don't have that triangle here. We just have that one line item for the bank accounts, which is in essence grouping together the cash accounts. And then we have the same for the accounts receivable. We don't see that breakout because this is another account type. We just have that one line item. So that's good for demonstration purposes. And then we got the other current assets, which over here included these other accounts. That could be a fairly large grouping of accounts that are now grouped into simply other current assets here. And then we've got the fixed assets all grouped into one categorization down below. Then we have the total assets. And then on the liability side, similar thing. Liabilities are broken out into simply the current liabilities, which is a normal financial accounting group. And then the account types, instead of having each account in the account types and a header of them, such as accounts payable, credit cards, and other, they're all in one line item, multiple accounts then grouped into that one line item to get us to the total liabilities, and then long-term liabilities, this being total current liabilities, long-term liabilities, total liabilities, and then you can see all equity accounts are now grouped in here as well. So that would be like the owner's equity account, the retained earnings in this case, the capital accounts would all be grouped together as basically one line item. And there we have our summary report. So again, really good report for presentation purposes and the kind of the starting out of the conversation type of report. Let's do some standard formatting to it now. We're going to go back up top and then customize this thing. So we have the customize. We're going to go down to the header and footer. Let's go down to the header and footer. We're going to remove the date prepared, time prepared, report basis. So we remove those. Balance sheet summary, that's an appropriate name. So we'll keep the header as the balance sheet summary. Going to make the negative numbers up in the general category to be bracketed as has been our custom. We're then going to say show them as red as well. So red and bracketed negative numbers. Run that report. So there we have it. So we've just made some slight adjustments to it. Also note that this edit titles tab is an interesting feature here because if you're displaying this report, you might change some of these titles, which are basically the groupings of the category groupings of accounts. So the accounts receivable assets, those are typically standard. Bank accounts, you might change that to say cash. Cash would be more appropriate than bank accounts typically when you're presenting financial reports in like generally accepted accounting principles or normal financial accounting language. You won't typically say these are all our bank accounts. They'll say these are the things that fall under cash and cash equivalents or something like that. And then the fixed assets, again, this one you might call property, plant, and equipment, which is common there, or depreciable assets are two other common names that you might prefer to name that. And then on the credit cards, you got the credit, we'll keep the credit cards. Long-term liabilities, and then the equity is another one where you might call it owner's equity, stockholders equity, partner's equity, and then the retained earnings, you might call that categorization, you might call something other than retained, like owner's equity or something like that. And these two are, if you can change these, it's really nice also if you're a not-for-profit organization, because when you process reports for not-for-profit organizations, they often use terminology, of course, that indicates the fact that it's not profit-oriented, and that's going to change, some of these categories as well, which you can't often change, or you can't do it you used to not be able to do it as much in the desktop version. You can't really make these changes, but it's nice to be able to do that so that you can reflect the terminology. They don't affect the functioning. The reason you can't change them normally is because these account types have been set up as part of the function of QuickBooks. So you can't really change the name of the account type because when you add a new account, you're putting it on the account type, and these reports are being generated from the account types. So the fact that you can kind of change these is pretty nice. So that's just something to keep in mind. So now let's go out of this. Let's go ahead and print this like we have been before. We're going to save it as a PDF file, and we're going to add it to our Excel document so that we can have that one PDF file with all the reports that we have done thus far. Now note, if you're presenting this or giving this to someone else, this is probably the report that you want on top, because they're going to see that and say, oh, that's something that's not overwhelming to me. My eyes have not glazed over by simply looking at this report, hopefully. Because then if I go into the other reports, which are now going to do comparative reports, have percentages on it and whatnot, my eyes will most likely glaze over, right? So you want draw people in, whether you're doing a presentation or presenting the report with something that's going to be simplified and get right to the main point that you want, 1 to 3 points or something like in a presentation typically, and then drill down on the detail if you have an audience that is and that wants to that's going to go detail. So then let's go ahead and download this. So we're going to export it to a PDF file. So we'll save it as a PDF file, and then I'm just going to save it as a PDF. And then it goes down here because I'm in Google Chrome. If you're in a Microsoft Edge or Explorer or whatever, it'll be up here. And then if you're in like Firefox, there'll be a little drop down up here. And I'm going to then go into our folder. So our folder is right there. So I'm going to double click on the folder and try to do the old drag thing, dragging it where I want it to go. Dragging and dropping. It just sounds the easiest to drag and drop. I just wanted to say drag and drop, really. So then I'm going to drag and drop. And then we'll rename this thing. I'm just going to right click on it, rename it. And we'll put the same date, which is 20.12.31 balance sheet summary. That'll do it. And then let's export it to Excel. Now this time I'm going to open up the Excel that I want. So my other Excel report, I want to get it into this Excel report right there. So I'm going to open it up first, and maybe that'll make it easier for me to like copy over the tab. So I got these 3 tabs. I want to add that other tab like right there. So what I'm going to do then, this is my plan to do that. What I'm going to do is I'm going to close this out, and then I'm going to go export it again to Excel. And that's going to open it up down here like normal in Google Chrome. Open up the Excel report, and this opens up a whole nother workbook, but I want to put it into that other workbook that I have open. So now I'm going to enable the editing. So now like I have 2 workbooks open, like that one, and I want to take this worksheet and put it into the other workbook. So I'm going to see if this works now to right click on this tab, and then I want to move or copy. And it still doesn't show the other workbook open at this point in time. I think if I saved it and opened them both at the same time, it'll show it there, but it's not showing it. So what I'm going to do then is I'm going to go to the second workbook where I want it to go. I'm going to make a new tab. I'm going to hit the plus button, make a new tab. I'm going to go back to the prior workbook, copy the entire worksheet by hitting the triangle because that copies the entire thing. Right click and copy. And then I'm going to minimize this, and I'm going to put my cursor in A1 or select the triangle to have the whole entire worksheet thing, and then paste it. So there it is. I'm going to then call this the summary balance sheet, or maybe balance sheet summary. I'll start to abbreviate here. And then I'll typically go to the second view, the page layout, to make sure it fits on one page. It should, because it's like a condensed report. So, like it should fit on a page. And then now I've got all these reports. I want to print them all on one PDF file. So I'm going to use my cute PDF printer to do that by going to the file and then print. And then I want to print the entire thing. So I want to print the entire workbook. I'm printing it to the cute PDF printer. And so now I got 7 pages. Let's scroll through it just to make sure before I print it. I like to check it first. So yep, looks good. So then we're going to go ahead and print it by hitting the button that says print, like in it. It's going where we want it to go, or where I want it to go. I think you want it to go there too. That's where we want it to go. It's going to go into the financial statement reports. I'm just going to overwrite that one because we added another thing to it. And then I'll close it, and then I'll save it. And we can't save because the file is read-only. Well, that's strange. I'll save it later. But in any case, I'll go back on over here for now. I'll fix that problem later. Okay, and then I'm going to go over here, and now so now we can right click on this item and zip it. We got some 4 reports now, so it's getting kind of long to attach one at a time, or we can have this one PDF file with all of our reports that we have thus far. So we have that. It might be the easiest way to kind of show that to somebody else.